Okay, hello everyone and welcome to my video of me doing both a tier list and also doing a prediction for the regular season of the new Swedish Telia Esports series. So I haven't really made a tier list before, and I haven't always been a big fan of the tier list that has been made, but I wanted to give it a try and see what I can do. So that's pretty much why I'm here. But instead of just doing a random Twitter post, I decided to do a video about it instead, because I think that will help people understand why I did certain decisions and why I put people in certain tiers. So I wanted to better just explain myself in why I made a certain decision and why I think that player is better than that player and so forth. So yeah, before getting started, I just want to say that it's my own estimations. It's of course not 100% correct, but I think I assessed a lot of players very good and their potential as well. And I think that a few of the players that I will mention, and I'll try and be more specific on who those players are, have potential to both drop from their positions or raise very high from where they currently are. So that's pretty much the main thing I want to say, is that I tried to assume their reasonable potential within Telia Esports series, although they might exceed my own expectations, or they might underperform. That's totally up to the players, of course, but this is what I think is gonna happen and what I think is the most likely scenario, or a more neutral scenario. So yeah, let's just get started. So this is the tier list that I have made. As you can see, there are 4 tiers: S, A, B, and C, quite standard. I didn't choose to have an S plus tier because I thought, well, the only one that might be eligible for that is Merbs. And although it's reasonable to put him in such a tier, I just decided to whatever it, skip it. It's just gonna clutter up and take more space. But what I think is important to mention here is that the individual placings within the tier also matters quite a bit. If you take the example, for example, of Merbs and Zombiekungen, that shows that it is quite a big difference still between those two players. In that Zombiekungen, of course, is much closer to A tier, and Merbs is much closer to that S plus tier. So where I've placed them within the tier matters a lot, and that's why it doesn't look too clean, but I think that gives a more accurate estimation of where they actually are in terms of level, or where I think they are in terms of level. But anyway, speaking of Zombiekungen, that's where I will start, in the top lane. So as you can see, I think the top laners in Telia Esports series are quite close. They're all stacked up after each other. And if you start with Zombiekungen, of course, is very good. Gets the place in the S tier, but it's not like this unbeatable monster that no one has a chance against. And vice versa, if you look at Emin Datas, he's really not that bad. Like, he's a solid top laner. He's been in the Swedish scene for quite a long time. And he can hold his own against many top laners, but he might not really be that like insane carry that some of the other top laners will be. But yeah, anyway, starting with Zombiekungen, he was an obvious choice. Like, he's been very consistent for a long time now, has been performing very well. He had a few question marks in the Nordic League where he was looking a bit shakier than usual, but despite that, he never had like a bad game. He was always performing to some extent. So for me, it was quite clear that he is still the best top laner, although I think that many of the new top laners here will be able to challenge him. It's really not that far of a gap, and if Zombiekungen doesn't step up from his Nordic League form, I think that he will be overtaken by someone in the duration, maybe up until playoffs, but this tier list is more for the regular season. Who I put as the second place top laner is Yusak, who I also think is very good, of course. Trying to not be biased here, but he had a lot of good performances in the Nordic League. But the reason why I don't rate him higher than Zombie Kungen is that he's still more inconsistent. He still has a few more flaws and doesn't have as clean of a gameplay as Zombie Kungen does. Although he has a very high peak, and in the games against Zombie Kungen in the Nordic League, he was outperforming him both in lane and on the map, despite being counterpicked. But moving on, we also have Violence, if that's how you pronounce it, Svene Sips in A tier. And all of those are very strong top laners in their own right and deserve to be in A tier, I think. Again, this is very close, but I do think there is some difference. From looking at the players, I think that Violence have had... Seems like a very strong player. I haven't seen too much of him to like really accurately give him a good chance. Like maybe should be one place up, one place down or so. But it looks like a very strong, solid top laner that can play a lot of carries, and I think he might be a strong point in the Granit roster. Svene, then also probably in his prime, would be the best top laner on this list. Also a friend of mine, so of course, excuse the banter, but he's really not in the same shape as he used to be. I would love to see him get back in that shape, but right now he's not there, so I did put him in the top 4, but not any higher. But although you have to watch out for him because he might actually go up a few spots, or go down if he doesn't get back in the shape and the other ones in the list do. Sips again, the top laner of Falcon. I think he had a pretty good showing in the Nordic League as well. I don't think he was overrated, but I think some of the other top laners there were underrated. Sips have been like a very strong performer, I think, and he's been quite solid, but he hasn't been like this super carry from when I saw him, and he hasn't been like super consistent as, for example, Svene and Zombie Kungen usually are. So I do think he has a bit more to give. I would like to see him go more on the carry side, or become even more consistent and continuously always match up against the top laners. Like a good showing, and I can see him easily shoot for the top 2. But right now I don't think that's where he's at currently. I think he still has some way to go, so to say. And then we go to the B tier, Justin Dorser. If I remember correctly, he's not a Swedish player, so he is an import, and he is looking decent. Like I think he is master tier. Although I haven't seen too much of him, he looks quite strong. Might have some issues with the communication aspect, where the full Swedish teams might have an advantage. But he looks like a strong, solid player that looks consistent, like sort of Zombie Kungen-esque playstyle. So I do think he's gonna be mainly someone that holds his own ground, but won't really like go for the carry plays. And a top laner doesn't always need to be that kind of player, but we'll see. Like I think he can carry from a booster perspective from what I've seen, but I don't think he's in A tier just yet. But I do hope that he challenges the A tier top laners in the games. Gooby, who has been around for quite a while now. I put him just below Justin Dorser because I feel like he's not in the greatest of shapes either, although he was in a master tier shape a while ago. But he does have pretty good teamwork. I think he does play well in a team, and for sure, like on a good day, I think he can challenge other top laners. But also just as well, I do think he can get solo killed, like the vice versa. So I don't think I want to place him that much higher, although in some games I think he will exceed expectations, in some games he might perform a bit lower than that spot. But he has good teamwork, and I think he will perform to some extent. And lastly then, as I said, Amadeus, who he's a rock. Like he's been around for a long time in the league and always been this steady top laner that just usually plays the tank style, plays weak side, and that's it. And he does it fairly well. Like he does what is required in his team, but I haven't really seen him ever carry. So I think that's one of the flaws here. Like I can see him also being better than Gooby, since I think he can be more consistent. But I haven't seen him in action for quite a while, and it doesn't seem to be as integrated shape as he used to be. So for right now I will say that he's lower than Gooby, but if he grinds up a little bit, I think he will surpass Gooby. But it's pretty much the top laners, and I do think it's still very close. Like that's why I put him that tied between the tiers, because I really do think that it's a tight race, and like I can still see Amendatus having a decent game against Zombie Kunga. Although there still will be, of course, some skill difference. I don't think it's gonna be a stomp. Anyway, moving to the jungle. Here you see a bigger difference going up. I think Yike is, like, he's the best jungler in the league. I think that's quite uncontested from what I've seen and how he's performing. I'm trying not to think about the solo queue as well, but he's performing quite well there as well. So from what I've seen and from what I can see in OPGG, like he's a really, really good jungler and is performing super damn well. And I think he's likely to be the main playmaker in JuniQ, and I think he's gonna be really smurf there, because I think he's quite above all the other junglers in the league. But it's gonna be interesting to see like how much higher he is. Like it might be more than I put here, it might be a little bit less or somewhere around those lines, but he's a really good jungler, and I think it speaks for itself that he's an S tier. Like he's a very good player. Svictor is the jungler I put in the top of 8 here, and from what I've seen in the games, he's performing quite well on an individual level, but also this is a dude that has a lot of team experiences and has been around for a long time. Like he's been a very good jungler for a long time in Cell, and he's been way higher than Cell as well. So for me it felt quite natural that he is like the safe choice of the second best jungler in the league, especially on a team level. However, I do think that he will be very challenged on an individual level in the Telia Esports series here in Sweden. I still think he's going to be able to match it and be just above the other junglers, but I might be proven wrong. We might see some of the other junglers come up and do a good performance. And one of those junglers I think potentially are Bartholdi, who had a very, very good showing in Nordic League. I know he hasn't been just as active from what I've heard in the off season, but also if this is a player that gets back into his shape, I think he might contest for that top 2 spot in the jungle. And although he doesn't have the same team experience, he's still a good player, and I do think that we can see him really pop off in the jungle and carry quite a few games and probably cause an upset or two. Same goes with Sidon. I think that he also is very good individually, although kind of Rek'Sai syndrome in the jungle. I think that holds him back a bit. Although if he does get the Rek'Sai, I do see a case for him like shooting above the other two. But still, in team experience, I think he lacks a bit. And I'm reluctant to put him higher because I think he's never gonna get the Rek'Sai in any of the games. And the same goes with the jungle of Lightside. Also Rek'Sai syndrome, although I think he plays some other champs better than Sidon. And like it's a very close call here, I would say. I think these 3 junglers below Svictor all have very, very high individual potential, and all have that they lack a little bit in team experience. And I think that if they just step up a tiny bit in their individual play, but also end up performing very good in team environments, I think they all can overcome Svictor. Like I don't think Svictor will get much better than he is right now. And maybe I do overestimate him a bit as well. But I would say those 3 junglers after Svictor in A tier, I think can really have a good individual performance, and I think it's a very close call of who I think is the likeliest one to like exceed my expectations. I think you can make a case for all of them, and it's going to be very interesting to see them jungle against each other, because I feel like a lot of the jungle games will be very, very close and even, and who's better on the day can help affect much of the games decided. But yeah, I think you can. I think if, like, he's a young player, and I think that if he reaches his potential, I think he will end up being a top 2, top 3 jungler in the Telia Esports series. But it's hard to say like how far he can reach with that potential just during the regular season. But I would say it's worth to keep an eye out on him on that front. Now B tier, I think, has a few more uncertainties in the jungle spot. Stan123, from what I've seen, has had some good showings, and I think he can be very, very scary on his good day. I haven't seen enough of him to say that okay, he's for sure an A tier jungler, but he's looking very scary. Like I think he can very easily challenge the other junglers in A tier. But still, I would say I'm uncertain. This is one of the players that I'm less known about, and he might end up being the second best jungler in the league if he actually like performs and comes up more than I expect him to. But from what I've seen, I can only rate him in like the very top of B tier, because I do see him as a challenger to the A tier junglers, but nothing more than that just yet. But the absolute biggest wildcard would be Cly, because holy shit, like, he's off roll and he's not in his peak anymore. But like, it's Cly. Cly is good. Cly is smart, of course, very, very good team play. He's been in fucking Fnatic. Like, what more do you need to say on that front? And I can't really say, like, I don't know how good Cly is in jungle, but like, he's not gonna be garbage, of course, but how good will he end up becoming? Like, that's so hard to tell. And like, if he ends up being really good, he'll probably be a top 2 jungler, but also he might just not ever reach and become a good jungler and just stay bottom 2. And I don't think he's gonna end up being a super great jungler, but I think he's gonna end up being like solid, like a solid sort of top half B tier jungler. But I hope Cly proves me wrong. And then we have Tanu, who, like, I haven't really seen much of the guy, but it does seem like to be one of the weaker junglers in the league. Has a decent shampoo. I'll see if I can find it again. It's here, like, he has a half decent champion pool. He has way too much Kha'Zix and Karthus in his jungle pool, and then an Olaf. So like, beyond that, like, I don't think it's gonna be that good. So I think he's at the risk of being outbanned, like just like some of the other junglers on the list can be, like Sidon, Yu, and so forth. But he seems to be perhaps the weak link of Hybrid as well, and I think that he might be at the risk of being outbanned and outperform the jungle in some of the games, and I think that might end up costing Hybrid some of the games as well. So I would rate him as the weakest jungler, but like, maybe if he fits very well into the team and is a very good team player, that he can end up supporting the lanes very well and end up being like vital to connect the teamwork of Hybrid. But from what I can tell, I don't. He should be the weakest jungler, but we'll see. Moving on to mid lane. So Fox of Shadow is the one I put as the number 1 and the only mid laner in S tier. And the reason for that, I would say, is that, well, of course, the dude is challenger. Like, he seems to be very damn good. But also, I haven't put him in like this insane level. Like, he's higher elo than Merbs, for example. But Fox of Shadow doesn't have this same shampoo that Merbs has, and also I haven't seen enough of Fox of Shadow in team play to know like to what level he'll be. Like, will he be on full on solo queue with just great individual but then have no teamwork, like it's a lot of question marks, I would say, but potentially he might end up being really good. I still would rate him as the best mid laner, despite that his Echo and Talon probably will be permabanned. I think that's the biggest factor to consider here, is they'll probably be gone 24/7. And although I think he'll be a really good mid laner without him anyway. But it's gonna be a big difference, I think, still. But yeah, I would rate him as the best mid laner. And his greatest challengers probably is Air and Dragain, which I put just below. Both of them have been like challenger tier mid laners with way more team experience, especially Dragain. However, Dragain hasn't really had this great form recently from what I've been able to tell. Of course, I can't say too much from just looking at OPGG and from what I've like heard a little bit and seen. But Dragain probably in his best form is the best mid laner in the whole league. Might end up shooting at being one of the best players in the whole league if that happens. And I think if Dragain manages to actually grind back into that shape, he will for sure be the best mid laner, according to me. Like, he has very good teamwork, he talks very, very well. But also I think Air has very high potential, and I think getting into new league, I think they both will try and grind their way up. Air, really, really good individual. He was on a triad once with Lightside and was very good there as well. And like I think he's gonna perform. He's also been a bit off shape, but it's hard to say how much, that they will actually perform. But he has very good potential. I think Fox of Shadow, Air, and Dragain mainly will be the ones contesting for the best mid in the tournament or in the league. But right now, I do think that Air is slightly better than Dragain. Although I think that Dragain has the higher chance of pulling ahead and going beyond in the league. So we'll see who proves me wrong or right. Then I would, as you see here, I put Linkachu and Sleepwee in A tier as well. I think they're both very good players. I think they both have issues in solo queue, although they end up being much better in team play, which is very cool phenomena. I think especially Sleepwee is the one who's known for being shit in solo queue, but actually very good in team play. Like, it's hard to say like sometimes where Sleepwee is in shape, as his solo queue doesn't always reflect his team play. Like, he has swapped team now, and he is in quite a good, strong Granite team. And yeah, I think they're both for sure A tier, as they do perform better than their solo queue. And I think if we both see them in strong shape, I think they will threaten Air and Dragain if they don't watch out for their form. So I think this is going to matter a lot, like who will end up grinding the most now, who will push themselves to be the best. Because I think all the A tier millionaires will have like a real strong fight on like who will win lane, who will outperform the other one, and so forth. I do give Linkachu the edge here. From what I've seen from the mid laners here, I think he's beneath Dragain, because Dragain has really insane teamwork and is still a really good mid laner, even if he's out of shape. But Linkachu is also very good individually and still has pretty fine team play, I think. And so does Sleepwee, to be fair. And it was kind of a coin flip who I would put above which mid laner. Or just from what I think Sleepwee is a tiny bit more like tilt prone. But like I would say this is very close. I would almost prefer to extend the A tier and like make a small gap between Dragain and Linkachu. But just Linkachu and Sleep are so even in level, man. Like, I think they're very, very close. So it's so hard to say who will end up being the better mid laner. But a little bit because of light side bias, I have to go with Linkachu, I think. But it's close. It's very close. But anyway, I put both as A tier mid laners. And then it's Poodle Horse, quite a big gap up until Poodle Horse. Poodle Horse have been a little off lately, I think, although he's sort of making a comeback. Research now, I still think he lacks of one of the biggest flaws of being like a two-trick, one-trick pony of Nico and Gragas. And I think that's sort of what haunts him. If he would just drop those champions and grind everything else, I think he would shoot the tier list, because I do think he's quite good. But he gets quite a bit affected still by having Nico and Gragas taken away from him. And I don't think he's gonna ever get one of those champions, to be fair. But I still think he's slightly better than I'm Furby. I'm Furby, who's still quite new, and from what I've seen, he doesn't have the same team play as Poodle Horse, but he's up there contesting. Okay, I can see that I'm Furby, if he grinds hard, will probably go past Poodle Horse. But it's quite hard to tell, to be honest. But anyway, I think he has a broader champ pool than Poodle Horse as well, so it's a tight race. But still, I think Poodle Horse can have like these moments where he really goes and carries and does a really big play, and I think that's a little extra he has above I'm Furby. And lastly, we have Lilia, who's also the only player that I put in C tier, which I kind of don't like doing because I feel like a bully. But like I still think it's quite a big gap between him and the other Midlaners and Poodle Horse and Furby. Like from what I can see, he's plat 2 in solo queue, although he barely plays. So probably he might be like a D3 level midlaner, perhaps. It's a bit hard to tell. And I don't know at all his teamwork, like what teamwork he has, how he communicates or anything like that. I have no info at all on this guy. But from what I can tell and from what little bit I saw in the close qualifiers, he's not that great of a player still. And I would rate him as the mid laner in the bottom, unfortunately. I think if this is a person that ends up having better teamwork than I think he does, I still think he would make the B tier just barely. But I still think he lacks on the individual plane, and I think he would really need to grind up a lot to really catch up with Poodle Horse and I'm Furby and contest them. But that's the mid laners. And then moving on to ADC, like Merbs up in the top. I think Merbs is the best player in the league. He's very consistent, he can carry games as well. I think he's a very, very good ADC. And it's kind of surprising to see him just in Telia Esports series. I think that he should be much higher than that. But just because of that also, I think that he's the best ADC in the league, hands down, and the best player in the league. Scripter, also a very good ADC from what I can tell, with having some good performances. I think he can do very good hard carry performances, especially. From what I've seen, I think Merbs is a bit more consistent, and I think that's what makes the difference with Merbs and Scripter. Although perhaps Scripter can match Merbs in like some hard carry, hyper carry matchups and so forth. It will be very interesting to see, but I did end up rating them both in the S tier. In A tier, I only have 3 ADCs. Creon, who I think is on the border of making it to the S tier. From what I can see, very good, has very good team experience from other teams, and although he doesn't seem to be his challenger individual self level as he used to be, I still think he's a very good player that has good teamwork and will fit very well into the team. Partner up with Suka, I think they're gonna be a very strong bot lane that might be the best or the second best bot lane in the whole league. So I think that's gonna be very interesting to see how they're gonna end up performing. But yeah, I would say he's very close to breaking it into S tier, just from that team experience and still being on an individual good level. But I think he needs a little bit more in that aspect to make it up there. Then I do think that it is quite a big gap, and it is a bit of a gap between Royals and Spike. Up until Royals and Spike, I mean. I think they're both like solid ADCs. I don't think they're the kind of hyper carry ADC really. I think they're more like a utility team based, play for the team kind of ADC. And I think they can match well very good with the teams that they are in. But I still think that you still see this lack of individual skill that will make them match Creon and the S tier ADCs, for example, even if their teamwork are both on very good levels from what I've seen and heard. It's a very close race, to be honest. Like, I really like both these guys. Spike is an old friend of mine. But I would give Royals a slight edge. I think Spike might be better in team play than Royals, but I think Royals right now is slightly on top of Spike in terms of individual skill. So, yeah, like it's a very, very close race between the two. It was very hard to decide who I would put above the other, but I would give the slight advantage to the Royals, even if Spike is a little bit better on the unusual bot lane champions. Royal still, I think, is slightly better on the ADC champions, and I think the meta right now shifted back towards the ADC champions a bit. So I do think that favors Royals a tiny bit, which is part of the reasoning why I also think that he'll be better suited than Spike right now and is just slightly above. Anyway, then it becomes another gap to Elitan and Hades. Elitan and Hades both are making sort of a comeback into play. So is Micro, to be fair. But right now I think Elitan is in the best shape out of those three. I don't think he has the same teamwork strengths as Royals and Spike still, and I think he's just below them in terms of individual play. So that's why I did put a gap between them. But if he ends up grinding harder, I think he's gonna match up and like really threaten the other ADCs for the A tier spot. I really think that he can end up showing and becoming better than both those two individually. But that's up to show. But I still think regardless that he lacks a little bit in team play compared to those two. But yeah, the same is really can be said for Hades. I think he has more team experience than Elitan, but doesn't really have the same individual level right now. I think Hades probably is the better team worker out of the two, but still I think Elitan is in a better shape individually. But I think if both of them really grind up, we're gonna see the ADCs really contend hard for the A tier spots. Lastly, we have Micro, who's also really making a comeback, and like he used to be quite good, and I think he will end up catching up. But even if he catches up a bit, I think he's gonna lag behind a tiny bit in individual skill. I don't really know anything about his team play, which is why I want to put a question mark on that guy too. Like I think all the ADCs in B tier are question marks for me, because it's really hard to say how they will catch up from coming back from breaks. Like they've all been on longer breaks, I think, and it's really hard to say how will they catch up, like how fast will it happen. But I don't really know anything about Micros, like how he is in team play, how well he communicates and so forth. But he also looks like the worst individual ADC out of those three, so I would rate him the lowest. And that's why I also put the gap. I think it still is a marginal gap between them. And lastly, there's support players, in which I think Zuko actually looks to be the best support coming into the regular season. I think Zuko has been very, very much in the top for a long time now, and it's really hard to tell if he'll actually make it through. I think in the last 2 seasons of Cell, he's essentially been there, like he's almost the best, but not quite. But I think this will be the time when he ends up being the best, like the most solid support. Even if he mainly plays Lulu right now in solo queue, I still think he has a very fine champ pool, and I think it's gonna end up being just above the rest of the supports and end up being the best. Although I think that all the other supports in A tier will be able to contest him much as well. But from what I think right now, I think he is the best support. In the second place right now I have Snobby Poik, who has a lot of team experience actually, but it's always been kind of under the radar, I think, in the Swedish scene. I think he's one of the more creative supports in like what you can play, and he has like many crazy picks and plays all the meta champions as well. And he's very good in team play. Like he talks very well. He has very good macro, very good rotations as well. So I do think that he's very good, and I think that he's just up there in the top two, like really contesting for that number one spot on support. But I think he needs a little extra more of consistency. I think sometimes he hasn't been too consistent in his games and like have been caught out a bit. And I think that if he cleans that up and keeps being like the strong playmaker and also strong macro player that he can really be in his games, which is not really always seen. But if you look closely, you'll see that he actually do a lot of good macro play. And I think that if he ends up being more clean and ends up being consistent with his strong performances, I think that he will be the best support in the league. And that will be very fun to see, since of course I'm a light sider. So, but yes, later on we have Baloo, who he's been up and down a bit. I don't think he's was lately in the scene, but he's sort of making comeback again. At least in the Swedish one, I don't know what has happened outside of it. But he's also been a part of the Swedish scene for a long time, and he does have very good macro, and he's a very good team player with good communication. So he's you can't really underestimate the dude. I think that if he ends up being very clean on an individual level, he might probably challenge also for the best support spot. But anyway, as I see it right now, both Snabi and Suko are better than him individually, and they both also play quite fine in team play. Baloo has the better team play out of all those supports, probably the best team player. Yeah, I would say that he's the best team player, and communication-wise, macro-wise, and so forth, out of all the supports. But I still think it's a quite big individual difference between Snabi and Suko that makes me put him higher than him. They still don't have bad macro play or communication. So Baloo is just below them, but I think if he ends up stepping up individually, he will probably be the best support as well. Then it's Taremo also, who is a strong team play and individual support as well. I don't think he has the same potential as the other three supports, but he's still in a very good shape right now, and he's solid on those fronts. He has good communication. He seems great to work with. When he was in Light City, it was very great. And he is strong solidly, but I think the other have a bit more potential than him. So I do think that he won't be up there and challenge for the top spots or so. But anyway, still a very good support, and not in the bottom of A tier either. That's all I have to say. Then it's the B tier, where we have God Chele, Spanish support, and I think that might affect a little bit. He might lose out a bit on the communication part, but he looks like a solid support. I don't know too much about him, how he is in team play, because I haven't really seen much. On an individual level, he seems to be just about equal with Taremo from the little bit I can tell, but I do think he will lack a little bit in team play, although a small question mark there, he might end up being a really good team worker without me knowing it, and then suddenly shoots up to A tier. So I would say beware of that. That might be one of the things that changes here. Then it's Cyanide, who he's been around for a long time in the Swedish scene, and he you look at him and you see his individual play, and you always feel okay, well, he shouldn't be that good, but he always exceed your expectations somehow. He always performs better than you expect him to. Still, just because of that reason, I don't want to put him in A tier. I still think that the other sports have advantage over him, but he usually does end up performing a bit above the expectations you have on him. So yeah, I would say that he can really challenge those supports on a good day, but on a consistency level, I think he won't really make it to the A level. I don't think he'll be able to contest God Jelly individually either. But he is he is a very good team player. Then it's another gap up until Star Newbie, who I think also is a little bit worse than Cyanide, from what I can tell, but I also don't have enough information to know like how he is in team play. So I would say it's a small question mark there. Like maybe it's the main shot call, like maybe it's insane communication and I don't know about that. And then I would probably shoot him up 1 or 2 spots. But from what I can see and from the little I saw in the qualifiers, I wouldn't want to rate him any higher. Like I don't feel like it's justifiable to rate him higher than that. So I'm quite reluctant to that until I see more of him. Same kind of goes for Greece, who is essentially an ADC main, but that has kind of, like I've seen him play support before. And I don't know really what level he'll end up being at. He has good team play. He's been around the scene for a long time, I think since like season 3 or something like that. So, like honestly, I don't think he's gonna be bad at all, but I think that he will have he'll have a bit of issues because of the role swap. So I still wouldn't want to rate him higher than Star Newbie right now, but like if he ends up being super smurf and does a really good swap, I think he might end up contesting and getting top of B, maybe. But like as a starters, I think he'll be in the bottom of beer and like work his way up. That's what I'm predicting. But I'm putting him there to begin with. Anyway, that's all the players. And as I said, I tried to sort of put them like level with the ones that I think are equal between the roles as well, not just in the own role. So I hope that was like well understood to begin with. But yeah, like adding up all that, then I also try to make a tier list for the teams here. And pretty much, as you can see, I put UniQ in the S tier alone, and I think it kind of speaks for itself. Like they have a very strong roster. Like as you can see, they have 3 players in S tier. That alone is very good, and they have 2 players that are just outside of S tier in Baloo and Air. But also, like if you just look past that, like they have very good team experience, all of them essentially. And I think they're all Swedish, so they have good communication as well. And they seem really eager to play really hard and try and get that test trophy. So for me, they look like the strongest team. My only concern with them would be that I think the players are a bit passive, generally speaking. I think that if Giant doesn't get like a good carry game, like where he does the plays, I think the team might lack a playmaker. I think that's maybe their biggest issue. But like generally, they should have very good team play. They shouldn't really fall behind in any lanes, and they should have an advantage in every single lane almost in any game. I think there's very few players that will be able to match the players or have all the lanes matched. So for me, it feels very strong to have. Like I feel very good about UniQ being the number 1 team to begin with. I think Granit also is a very good team. They have very good, strong individual players, but I also think that the players can be matched in some way or in some games. I don't think any of the players are like super great, like to the point that they're unbeatable. Like I think all of them can be challenged, and none of them are the best in their role. And also, it's hard to say like how will the communication barrier affect the team. Like it's not a full Swedish roster. Perhaps that might have some effect. I don't think it's gonna matter too much though. I think overall they don't really have like this great weakness. I think that perhaps their support and mid laner can be outshined a bit by some of the other team mid and support. But overall, I don't feel like they have like that strong weakness really. That like okay, it's too big of a difference in that lane. And I think that if they do practice up really hard, I think they're gonna end up having good team play across the duration of the league, even though they might have a rocky start. And then I have Lightside, who I also put as an A tier. And sure, you might say that it's a little bit biased because, you know, Lightside owner, hehe. But yeah, like I think Lightside has the advantage of having very good teamwork. I think both Lightside and Falcon coming into it have the best teamwork. Lightside probably has like the tiny edge since we kept 4 players. and have worked with the coaches like a tiny bit before. So I think we have a good advantage in that, and it will especially show early on, maybe. But then it's also hard to say how that will transpire across of the whole regular season. But again, like I think one part of it is that a lot of the players are underrated. I think players usually underrate our top laner and mid laner and the jungler. People haven't really seen too much of Royals lately, I think. So I haven't really seen how historically Royals have been seen. But from Nordic League, I know that the top jungle and mid has been quite underrated. I don't want to say that they're gods because they're not godlike players. All I think are very good. But I think like it is a roster that has a very high potential, but also have issues with consistency. And I think that's what's gonna end up haunting them from not getting like a top 2 spot. I hope I'm wrong. I really hope so. But I think we're also gonna see glimpses of that high potential. So, like if Lightset fix those consistency issues, I think they're really gonna threaten and end up taking maybe the 2nd spot. But if not, and if they keep having too many consistency issues, they might drop down and even miss playoffs. Then it's Hybrid, who on paper looks very, very strong individually, but I also think that they have perhaps the worst jungler in the league, and I think that will affect the games a lot. Having a better jungler does impact your games, even if it's not as much as people think it is. But also, I feel like it's quite a bit of solo queue thrown into it. Like Zuko seems like a strong support, but he also, in the times that he has played, like there have been question marks. Okay, but maybe he isn't the best support. Although he's always essentially been at the top when he's playing in the league. And then I also think the mid laner, like how solo queue is that guy, and it's gonna be hard to say. Like he might end up popping off real hard, or it might end up being a flop. I don't think it's gonna flop. I still think they're gonna perform quite well. But yeah, take that together with that they don't all speak Swedish. Of course, like all of them speak English and they will still communicate well. But I still think the communication gets an extra level if you speak the same language in native tongue. I think that will have a tiny bit of effect. But mainly I think they have like no team play, like no synergy compared to the light side. And I think that like in the long run, it might even out a bit. But I think the edge that Lightset has in the beginning will end up proving vital, which is why I put Lightset over Hybrid. But I still put Hybrid over Falcon. And Falcon is still a very good team with very good team play. But I think they do have that issue with that they don't have like this player that really sticks out hard in their role. Like it depends a lot on if Barfield ends up stepping up again and being a very main character. Dragain does the same and gets back to his former glory. I think then we're gonna see a lot of strength coming out from Falcon in the mid jungle, which can carry quite hard. But if they don't come back into that shape, and I'm a bit reluctant if they will or if they won't. But I think that will affect a lot where Falcon will be in the standings. I think if Dragain and Barfield do step up, I think they will go beyond Hybrid actually. But I think both need to do it to end up proving vital. But they still have good team play, and I think that's not underestimated. I think they still might pull ahead of Hybrid just due to that previous synergy, perhaps even above a flight side. But I kind of have that feeling that the players won't reach the same potential as they could have been, and I still think that they might get outshined and too much individually in some points. Which is why I will put them in the bottom of 8 here. But for sure they are contenders of the 2nd place, and I think it's going to be closer than people think it is. Then it's B tier, where it's Slonomania. I think it is quite a solid team, but I think they do have issues with the mid laner not being the best. I think that's going to impact a lot, but across the board I still think they're going to be a better team than Invulnerables and Void. I think if they get a better mid laner, or if they really exceeds my expectations, that they will be a playoff contender. But as from what I can see now, that shouldn't be the case. But they have like a solid top laner that doesn't really lose that hard, and they have a very, very good jungler, which is why I also put him above the other two teams. And they have a solid bot lane as well. Like the bot lane is by no means bad. So I do think they have like across the board a stronger matchup against Invulnerables and Void, unless their mid gets hard abused. And yeah, Invulnerables I think will be slightly above Void, and I think they do have the advantage in like mid lane tiny bit. They have the advantage in the jungle a tiny bit, and also in like I don't know, like I think top and bot lane and mid are very, very close, and it will matter on the day who will be the better of those two teams. But I think Sidon, if he is supposed to be as good as he seems, he should make the difference, I think. Like, they're very close games, but I think if we're completely even and everyone has a good day, I think Invulnerables will be slightly better. Because I think that they have a bit more possible pop-off players as well. Like I think Poodlehorse, for example, can make a big play and be the big difference. I think he is a bit more clutch. I think the invulnerable players are a bit more clutch across the board, and I think that's gonna matter. And also that I know that they have more team experience. Oh, never mind, I'm wrong. By the way, it's Clyde, not Sidon. So yeah, like they have a lot of good team experience, and I think that might end up proving like slightly above. Like I think they have more synergy and teamwork as a team than Void have. Although Void is much more new in that sense across the board. So like it's so close, but I think that's the reason why Invulnerables will finish over Void. And Void again, like if they do get a good team experience going, I think they might end up contesting and getting above Lanomania even. Especially if Furby can outperform both the mid laners and the bot lane can go even, and he can play through a strong top and jungle in Justin Dorser and Stan. But from what I can tell right now, I don't think it's too likely to happen that it's gonna be like, oh wow, they're actually snowballing hard top and jungle. But yeah, I think that if they manage to go even in bot and mid, I think that top and jungle can carry and beat the likes of Lanomania and Invulnerables. Although I would bet against it. So yeah, that's the whole tier list. And just real quick, I also want to show off my predictions for how I think the teams are going to place more specifically. So it is in the same order as I have the teams here in the tier list. Otherwise it would feel a bit troll. But I do think it's going to be placed like this. And as you see, like Falcon and above are way closer. I think UniQ will maybe drop a game or two in the beginning, but after that, especially in the later half, I think they're just gonna go clean through it all if they actually reach their potential as they should. Granite Gaming, a bit of the same story. I think individually they will be able to upset UniQ maybe early on, or yeah, like I think they can upset them, but it's likely that they won't. But I think they have the similar UniQ story, that they will maybe be a bit rocky early on due to a bit of lack of team experience or synergy together, but I think it's going to increase and become more steadily over time. But still, like from seeing the players and how good they have in terms of team experience, I think UniQ has the advantage, and it's like, as you can see, like I think it's like a game difference there. And it's my own team, Lungus Lightside. I think we'll have very strong advantage in the early stages of the series. But as other teams catch up in synergy, I think they might see a drop. So I think Lightside will have a strong first half, but perhaps have a little drop after that. I still think the strong first half and synergy that we already have will be able to provide us a playoff spot. But yeah, I still think Lightside needs to step up to actually be able to reach that top 2 position that I want us to be in. Hybrid Esports, I still think that it will end up being a bit too much solo queue and some language barrier in there. And I think it's going to be quite equal. Like, I think they were the last team to finish their roster as well, so I think they're going to be very rocky in the start, and I think that's going to end up costing them a lot. I think they will catch up eventually, but I think it might be too late to like reach higher than the third spot. And I think this is where it's going to be very interesting to see, like, between Hybrid and Falcon. Falcon will have so much better synergy because they finished the roster way before and also had previous experience. So I think if Hybrid has too much of a rocky start, they're going to suffer really hard early on, and we might see Falcon be 9-5 instead of Hybrid, and Hybrid being 7-7. But I would pretty much say that it's going to be very vital to see, like, okay, how will that factor matter? I still think Hybrid will be able to catch up because they are very talented players, but I think it's gonna be an issue for them to actually make it higher than that. So, and yeah, with Falcon, I think that they do have that good team synergy, but I think they're gonna fall off quite hard in the middle of the season if the mid and jungle don't step up hard. I think if they do step up, I think it's gonna be a very close race between Falcon to Granite, who will be playoff teams here. But I still have this feeling that I don't think they're gonna fully reach that potential, and they're gonna have good team play, but then everyone else will catch up, and then Falcon's gonna drop a little bit in the second half of the series. But then yeah, I do think there's a quite big gap between them and Lena Mania. Like, it looks much closer, but I think Falcon will easily beat the other three teams. Like, maybe they'll have one upset, but then I also think Falcon will easily upset one of the teams above. But Lana Mania, I think, should not be able to beat Falcon unless they have like a really good day and Falcon has a bad day. But even then, I think Lana Mania will have the advantage over the other two teams, just because they do have previous team experience and synergy, all of them. But I think individually they won't be able to match Falcon, even if they have that synergy going into it. But I think it's gonna matter a lot, both the individual and team synergy, when they compare to Invulnerables and Void. And like, sure, I think they might end up dropping one game in total to those two teams, but even that is a little bit doubtful. But I did put them that they will potentially upset Falcon, but then also drop a game to Invulnerables. And it is also where I want to show that Invulnerables and Void are quite close. I do think that on a good day, Invulnerables will be able to upset Lena Mania, but that Void Esports won't be able to do that. And then between those two teams, I think it's going to be quite even. I think it's going to be 1-1 between Invulnerables and Void in the regular season. But I don't see them being able to upset any of the teams in Falcon, like in A tier or above. I really don't see it. But I think it's going to be very close between them. But I do give the advantage to Invulnerables because I think they have the best shot at potentially either 2-0 Void Esports or upsetting Lana Mania and going 1-1 against Void Esports. So yeah, that's why I did these predictions and why I did those standings. Of course, I know it might be a little bit controversial and it might end up being completely different, but I think I had fair reasons and fair assessments to why I did certain decisions, and also I think that, sometimes you gotta go with the gut feeling. I feel that Falcon won't reach that potential that they could be able to. Same with Hybrid. It's gonna be very close. I think even if I put 7-7 Falcon, I think they're gonna have very close games against all the other teams above. But I think they're going to miss out on a lot of close victories, which is what I think will be the main difference. I think the other teams, especially UniQ and Granite, will have a bit too much clean team play in the later stages for Falcon to be able to match them. So I think Falcon will contest very well against the top tier teams here, but they will have some issues here going into it. But anyway, that's all I had to say. Thank you all so much for listening to my tier list and prediction video. Feel free to comment, of course, if you agree or disagree, or what you would want to change compared to me. Of course, remember that this is not 100% accurate. It's a gut feeling, and of course a little bit biasy because, well, lights at owner, come on, I gotta. But yeah, if you disagree or what you want to change, just please comment and let me know, and it will be interesting to see your own take on how you think that the league is gonna go. Anyway, good luck to all the teams in Telia Esports Series Sweden, and it's gonna be so much fun to compete against all of you. I'm so looking forward to it, and I'm so incredibly hyped. It's gonna be the best league that Sweden has ever seen, and it's gonna be awesome. Alright, take care everyone, and I'll see you next time. Ciao.